Hello and welcome to News in Depth here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Today on November 11th, Poland celebrates 107 years since getting its independence back, a moment that still means quite a lot to Poles everywhere. Now, after more than 100 years of partitions, the country came together in 1918 through courage and determination. From the peaceful takeover of Warsaw back then to today's parades and celebrations, this day is all about the spirit and pride that keep Poland strong amidst the ongoing divisions in the country. Now, joining me now to talk about all this in studio is Stuart Dowell, the political editor of TVP World. Stuart, welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us here.
Good to be here.
So it's quite a day. I mean, we're hearing the celebrations outside. We've seen salutes. We've had a marching band. I mean, I was there this morning reporting live from where President Navroski began the ceremony at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Now, let me ask you about, if I'm right, you wrote an article for our portal. And you describe, if I'm going specifically into the Independence March. So now you describe the Independence March as a, quote, barometer of the Polish right. Now this year, to our understanding, President Navroski, as the first president who attended this march, notwithstanding when President Duda attended it for the 100th anniversary, right? So this would be really, it would make Navroski the first president attending it like this. So. What does it reveal about the current state of the right wing in Poland?
Well, it was expected that Karol Nawrocki would participate, but it's still significant. I think what's interesting this year about this year's march is that it's very different to previous years.
How so?
Because this year, for the first time in about 2 decades. Law and justice are not the absolute dominant force on the Polish right. Even back in recently in the 2023 election, the main competitor now to Law and Justice, the Konfederacja Party, picked up about I think it was 7 or 8%. At the presidential election this year, the Confederation candidate got around 15%. A splinter group from that party, under the name of Grzegorz Braun, got, I think, as well 6 or 7%. So everything has changed on the Polish right, and the march is a kind of spectacle, a theatre where those competing parties carry out a kind of battle for the hearts and minds of Polish conservatives.
But is it really right to say that it's a spectacle or theater? Because, I mean, you see Poles out there that are proud to be Polish and are proud of their flag, and they're waving it, not necessarily because maybe they share the far-right nationalistic mindset or goals, but because, it's Independence Day and they want to march, to say loud and proud that they're Polish. So can we really call these marches as such? I mean, a child marching in these Independence Day parade marches doesn't understand, right? That as you're calling it a political theater, right? So how can you explain maybe this division that of maybe how it started from decades ago and years back to how it's developed today, if, as you're saying, it's becoming more of a political tool, right?
Well, it's always been a political tool. Of course, the people who the political theatre doesn't apply to the ordinary people who go on the march. They go for their own reasons. The march originated in 2010, and it was organised by a group called the ONR, the Radical National Camp. It's a very, very ultra right-wing group that has its origins in pre-war fascism, even. And for many years, the march was regarded as toxic by mainstream parties. But the march over the years has become more popular. People like to go, families with children, it's widely reported. And mainstream parties, I mean particularly Law and Justice, because it's really an event for the right, can't really ignore it. And when I talk about political theatre, I'm really talking about the appearance or not by senior politicians. You mentioned that Andrzej Duda has actually been on the march. That was in 2018 on the 100th anniversary of Polish independence. And also senior figures from Law and Justice, Jarosław Kaczyński, and members of the cabinet were there. But it was interesting that on that march, they set up a kind of a separate front line to divide themselves from the organisers, who are still seen as too toxic to be associated with. What's very interesting in this march is not so much the presence of Law and Justice, but the presence of Karol Navroski. They're describing it as the first kind of full-blooded participation by a Polish president.
And we're seeing those images right there as we speak, right? That's quite a march there. Stuart, but do tell me though, how do you think that, I mean, this mixture, right, of, families and sidelined by these leaders and President Navroski, what does that mix tell us about Polish conservatism today?
Well, Polish conservatism makes up, if you look at polling and breakdowns, it makes up more than 50% of the political spectrum. So obviously there's a lot of people involved in that, and it's interesting about the march that although it's always had this reputation of being organised by the very, very far right. It's been seen as the premier event for people who want to come out and wave a flag and show their patriotism.
Just for a moment, I'd like us to take a listen to a speech by President Karol Navroski from earlier today.
We are the 20th largest economy in the world. President Donald Trump invited the President of Poland to the G20 summit. He invited me, but most importantly, he invited all Poles, because it is you who have worked hard and developed your own businesses. This great economic success is your achievement. This great ally of ours has declared, which we are happy about with the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister, that the American soldiers on the territory of Poland, who are supporting Polish soldiers, will remain in Poland, and this is also good news for our country. We are ready for Poland to also become an energy and gas hub for all of Central and Eastern Europe, together with our American partners.
Stuart, praising Poland, praising Polish soldiers, but what else stood out to you today from some of the key speeches by Navroski earlier on?
Well, his speech was dominated by the idea of unity, but it was a strange kind of unity. It was a kind of unity that only if you belong to our side, then we can be unified with you. If you're on the other side, you're not part of our unified group. He used an interesting quote from the Polish poet Juliusz Słowacki that he doesn't want Poland to be the parrot of nations. The idea is that Poland absorbs and just repeats everything that comes, as Karol Navroski said, the West, which is a kind of he used it with a negative tone, and he was talking about he talked about the danger of importing foreign ideologies into schools and the education system. He surely referring there to gender ideology. He also said that while he's a supporter of the EU, he warned about foreign institutions and agencies, including the European Union, taking away Poland's sovereignty. So, whilst he said that his talk was about unity, it was really a doubling down on polarization, in my view.
And speaking of unity, Polish Premier Donald Tusk was in Gdańsk earlier today. Let's listen into what he had to say.
Independence Day is also a day of pride. We're all under the white and red flag. On this day, and every time we gather under it, we want to ensure that no one gets excluded and that we all say the word homeland with equal pride. No one has the right to tear the white and red symbols from other Poles. On this day, let no one raise their voice against another Pole. No one has a monopoly on patriotism. We're a community. Today, it's worth reminding ourselves once again of the meaning of the word republic, respublika. In our language, it means common cause. Let no one ever forget this. An independent Poland is our common cause.
An independent Poland, our common cause. We are all under the white and red flag. Homeland with equal pride. Stuart, what do you think on Donald Tusk's quite strong words there?
Yeah, strong words. It's difficult for centrists and liberals on a day like today because it's really dominated by the right. And Donald Tusk, I think, was expressing that kind of frustration that he was saying, we're also patriots. We can be patriots too.
Don't forget about us.
Yeah, you know, it's not just you on the right. And there is a sense that the right kind of monopolised the concept of patriotism, although of course patriotism can mean different things to different people, and it can be quite distinct to nationalism. So he was expressing that, and also it was interesting that a lot of people on the government side, government supporters, were critical of Karol Navroski's speech that contained criticisms of the government's actions, government politicians. They said that it's kind of politicizing what should be a day of national commemoration
and pride
and unity. Yeah, but then Donald Tusk, in a tweet later, kind of made an indirect reference showing a picture of Gdansk, saying, look, here we've got unity. And that's been interpreted as a kind of a jibe back to Karol Navroski, making it a kind
so
of
a tit for tat scenario.
Yeah, exactly. So like either on both sides there's party politicking going on. It's not surprising because that's the environment that we live in here in Poland.
Stuart, with parliamentary elections coming up, I mean, how do you think alliances between Law and Justice, Confederation, or even coalitions with Tusk's civil coalition play out?
Well, we know that the polling at the moment suggests that only a few parties will enter the same, the Polish lower house at the next election, which is scheduled for 2027, quite a way off, but we have to look at the data we've got now. And if either the Civic Coalition or Law and Justice wants to govern, they have to govern with a coalition partner. The only reliable, the only feasible coalition partner is Confederation. And that dynamic is dominating everything in Polish politics at the moment.
For instance?
Well, Jarosław Kaczyński, leader of Law and Justice, says that Law and Justice are currently polling around 30%. At the election 2023, they polled around 33%. They were the largest party. They were the winners, in fact, but they just couldn't form a coalition. Now they're struggling to go over 30%. There's not much to suggest that that's going to change. Jarosław Kaczyński has said that he wants to get up to 40%, because with 40%, he can, or Law and Justice can govern independently without a coalition partner. And the way that he can get to 40% is by attacking the Confederation Party. And it's important here to point out that Confederation is an alliance now of two parties. There's the kind of standard nationalist movements party, and then there's Sławomir Menczen's party, which is economically libertarian, of course, as well very, very conservative. But that's his main direction of attack.
No, you just did bring up Mencken. How do you think that Mencken is shaping the strategies of Law and Justice and Kaczyński personally?
Well, exactly. Mencken is the main target of Kaczyński's and Law and Justice's
so seen
attacks.
As quite a threat.
Yeah, the idea is that if by the attacks they can split up the coalition, it would be much easier for them to cooperate with the national movement. And the way they do it is both personal and on policy. Personally, Jarosław Kaczyński has talked about Menczen's youth, that he's too young and inexperienced. He's also made some unpleasant personal attacks on policy, the two parties are quite different. Sławomir Menczen's party is economically libertarian and opposes the generous welfare payments. For example, the 800 plus, the 180 or so euro payment for children.
Which really touched Ukrainian mothers.
Yeah,
well.
exactly. And on the other side, Menczen has attacked Jarosław Kaczynski, saying that he's a political gangster and even a boor. So it's hard to see how a coalition in the future between the two could come about after these personal attacks. On the other hand, all it takes is for Jarosław Kaczynski to say, well, this stuff happens in politics, now we've got different dynamics, maybe he's not so bad, and they would probably cooperate if there was political advantage in it.
But you're saying that they don't see any political advantage to that? They simply don't want that?
Not at the moment, no.
And let me ask you this. I mean, how do you think also, given this march, right? I mean, it's become pretty from everything that you've told me, aside from symbolism, right? But more of like a contest, if that's what I can call it, for who quote unquote owns Polish patriotism. Mm-hmm. How do you think that that's becoming? I mean, how important is this symbolic power compared to, for instance, now Navroski being president?
Well, Navroski is the kind of interesting element to all of this. He ran for president and won, being the candidate supported by Law and Justice, although he was never a member of Law and Justice, but he was their candidate. But in order to win in the second round, he needed the votes of Confederation supporters, which he got, and just pipped Rafał Trzaskowski at the end. Now, surely, as any politician would be thinking how to win his next election in 5 years. He knows that he has to, again, court those Confederation voters. And then what's also interesting about Navroski is if you look at his positions, they sometimes deviate from the standard Law and Justice position, particularly on Ukraine. At the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion, Law and Justice were probably the leading supporter of Ukraine in Europe. Sent a lot of equipment, support, and campaigned in Europe to support Ukraine. Karol Navroski, in his presidential campaign, was very critical of Ukrainians for historical grievances, and continues that, for example, with his vetoing of the law that would help Ukrainians living in Poland.
Finally, Stuart, I just want to ask you personally, how do you view November 11th here for Poles?
I think that in Poland, there's a lot of emphasis on the Second World War and the tragedy, the disasters that befell the country, and that's kind of understandable. But at the end of the First World War, and Poland regained its independence, it was a kind of a perfect story. Everything fell into place after several national uprisings. It's a story that's beautiful and almost perfect, and should be told by Poles as much as they can.
Thank you so much, Stuart, for everything that we've discussed here today. That's Stuart Dowell, political editor at TVP World. And thank you for watching this edition of News in Depth. I'm Skaya. We'll see you next time.